Daniel Dye didn't lose his season on the track, he lost it in front of a camera. What started as a simple live stream turned into a moment that NASCAR could not ignore. Within hours, a rising driver went from competing for points to being indefinitely suspended. But the real story is not just what he said. It is how fast everything unraveled. And now the question is simple. Does this end his momentum or redefine his career? It started in a setting that had nothing to do with racing. Daniel Dye was on a live stream, casually opening trading cards on Whatnot. It was supposed to be light, informal, the kind of content drivers use to connect with fans away from the track. There was no pressure of competition, no media obligations, no structured environment. Just a camera, a conversation, and a moment where he chose his words poorly. While telling a story about IndyCar driver David Malukas, Dye mocked him using a voice and tone that crossed a clear line. It was not subtle, and it was not ambiguous. Within minutes, clips from that stream began circulating online, and the reaction was immediate. Social media does not wait, and in situations like this, context rarely slows anything down. The clip spread quickly across platforms, reaching fans, media members, and eventually NASCAR officials. What might have once been a private mistake instantly became a public controversy. And once it reached that level, the outcome was no longer in Dye's control. The sport had to respond, and it did. On the same day, NASCAR issued an indefinite suspension. Not a fine, not a warning, not a short-term penalty. Indefinite. That single word carries weight. It means there is no set timeline, no guaranteed return, no clear path forward until certain conditions are met. NASCAR also required Dye to complete sensitivity training before any reinstatement could even be considered. That was not just a disciplinary action, it was a statement. The organization wanted it understood that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated, especially in a public setting. Almost immediately after NASCAR made its decision, Kaulig Racing followed with its own suspension. That move is just as important as NASCAR's ruling. Teams are not obligated to mirror the sanctioning body's penalties. But when they do, it sends a strong message. Kaulig Racing made it clear that they stood behind NASCAR's decision and that they expected a higher standard from their drivers. For Dye, that meant losing not just track time, but also the support structure that helps sustain a young career. The timing could not have been worse. Dye was in the middle of a full-season campaign, sitting 13th in the Craftsman Truck Series standings. That position may not sound dominant, but it placed him firmly in the competitive mix, with a realistic path to fight for a playoff spot. Consistency, development, and momentum were all part of his trajectory. Now, all of that has been interrupted. Points do not wait. Opportunities do not pause. The season continues, with or without him. Shortly after the suspension was announced, Dye issued a public apology. He admitted that his comments were careless and acknowledged that he did not think enough before speaking. He did not attempt to deny what happened, and he didn't try to shift blame. He accepted responsibility and expressed a willingness to learn from the situation. In many cases, that is the first step toward repairing damage. But in a moment like this, an apology is only the beginning. It does not erase what was said, and it does not immediately restore trust. To understand why NASCAR reacted so strongly, you have to look beyond the single incident and consider the broader environment of the sport. NASCAR has spent years working to reshape its image, to expand its audience, and to create a more inclusive atmosphere. That effort has involved policy changes, public messaging, and a consistent emphasis on professionalism from drivers and teams. When a moment like this goes viral, it directly challenges that progress. NASCAR cannot afford to appear passive in situations that conflict with its stated values. There is also the reality of how the incident occurred. This was not an off-the-record conversation. It was a live stream accessible to anyone watching in real time. That removes any ambiguity about privacy. It also increases accountability. When a driver speaks publicly, especially in an unscripted environment, they represent not only themselves, but also their team, their sponsors, and the sport as a whole. That responsibility does not disappear just because the setting feels informal. For Kaulig Racing, the decision to suspend Dye was about more than aligning with NASCAR. It was about protecting the team's identity and maintaining credibility with partners and sponsors. Racing organizations operate within a network of relationships that depend heavily on reputation. When a driver creates negative attention, it can have ripple effects that go far beyond the track. By acting quickly, Kaulig Racing demonstrated that they prioritize accountability and professionalism. The immediate impact on the Truck Series is significant. With Dye sidelined indefinitely, his seat becomes uncertain. Teams must adapt quickly in situations like this, often bringing in substitute drivers or adjusting their strategy to stay competitive. For other drivers, this creates opportunity. A spot that was previously locked now becomes available. The battle for points shifts, and the dynamic of the field changes. In a series where margins are already tight, even one unexpected change can alter the trajectory of multiple teams. Looking ahead, Dye's path back into NASCAR is not simple, but it is also not impossible. The first requirement is clear. He must complete the sensitivity training mandated by NASCAR. That step is not just procedural. It is meant to demonstrate that he understands the impact of his actions and is committed to improving. Beyond that, he will need to rebuild trust with both NASCAR and his team. Trust is not restored through statements alone. It is earned through consistent behavior over time. There is also the public dimension. Fans play a significant role in shaping a driver's reputation. Some will be willing to forgive, especially if they see genuine growth. Others will not forget as easily. Managing that perception requires more than silence. It requires accountability, humility, and a clear effort to move forward in a better way. In a sport as visible as NASCAR, every action contributes to how a driver is viewed. This situation also serves as a broader reminder of how quickly circumstances can change. In motorsports, drivers are trained to manage risk on the track, to make split-second decisions at high speeds. But the modern landscape requires a different kind of awareness off the track. Social media, live streaming, and constant connectivity mean that every moment has the potential to become public. The margin for error is small, and the consequences of a mistake can be immediate. For young drivers in particular, this is a lesson that cannot be ignored. Talent alone is not enough to sustain a career. Professionalism, judgment, and the ability to represent a team in a sport are equally important. Teams invest in drivers not just for their performance, but for their ability to carry a brand. When that trust is broken, the response can be swift and unforgiving. Daniel Dye's situation is now at a crossroads. One path leads to a return, built on accountability and growth. The other leads to missed opportunities and a career that struggles to recover from a defining mistake. The outcome will depend on how he handles the next phase, not just publicly, but privately, in how he approaches change. What is certain is that March 17, 2026 will remain a turning point, not because of what happened on the track, but because of what happened off it. A moment that seemed small in real time became a major story, a major consequence, and a major test of character. NASCAR made its position clear. Kaulig Racing reinforced it. Now the next chapter belongs to Dye, and how he writes it will determine whether this moment becomes the end of something or the beginning of a difficult but necessary comeback.